Hey there, Detroit sports fanatics, and welcome to episode 73 of Taylor's Detroit Sports on Spreaker and iHeartRadio. You can also add me on Facebook as Taylor Phillips, Taylor Phillips online at facebook.com/Phil1DT. Like my Facebook page, Taylor Phillips' Detroit Sports page. Taylor Phillips' Detroit Sports page. Join my Facebook group, Taylor Phillips' Detroit Sports Group, and follow me on Twitter at DT2Phillips. Talking lots of Lions first off. Then we're going to talk about the Detroit Red Wings being the same old Red Wings. The Detroit Pistons tipping off a great preseason in the Tigers press conference with Dave Dombrowski. Okay, first off, the Lions are home against the New Orleans Saints Sunday at 1 on Fox. And I have some keys to that game from MLive.com, written by Justin Rogers. A lot has been made about the Detroit Lions' struggling pass protection this season, but New Orleans quarterback Drew Brees has faced just as much pass rush pressure. The glaring difference is Brees has been sacked just 4 times, while counterpart Matthew Stafford has been dropped behind the line of scrimmage on 21 occasions. Brees said during a conference call with Detroit media, and I quote, I think you just understand that sacks, like penalties for an offense, they're negative plays or drive killers. So at all costs, I try to avoid them, unquote. Brees' ability to anticipate pressure, move around the pocket, and still find receivers is a big part of what has made him an elite player at the position for many years. Even with the pressure he's faced, he's still completing 68.8% of his passes, better than everyone except San Diego's Phillip Rivers. The Lions have feasted on opposing quarterbacks this season. They lead the NFL with 20 sacks and are 5th with 7 interceptions. Even Super Bowl winning signal callers have struggled against Detroit as Eli Manning and Aaron Rodgers combined to complete 56.7% of their passes for 325 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. But Brees' ability to move and still make throws with pinpoint accuracy as his pocket collapses presents a unique challenge. Most weeks, making a quarterback uncomfortable by moving them off their spot is enough. But the Lions understand they must do more against Brees. As you can see, my broadcast is posted on Facebook on my personal profile, Taylor Phillips. Lions defensive tackle Ndamukong Suh talked about Brees and said, and I quote, I think he's a very mobile quarterback, understands where his windows are, how people like to rush him. I think getting him down is going to be what's good enough. I think moving him, he can move around the pocket, can go outside the pocket and still hurt you, unquote. Where Detroit could create an advantage is by leaving an extra defender in coverage. The team's front four has been good enough on its own that they won't need to blitz Breeze. An extra rusher just gives him a weakness in the secondary to expose. Saints coach Sean Payton says, and I quote, "I think the challenge with Detroit is they're able to get that rush with four guys and now play coverage, and that can distort your timing in the throws. It's one thing, and Drew Brees is pretty good about pressure, the ball coming out, and generally that means you're getting some type of single safety defense. It's when you're getting hurries in a too deep shell that becomes problematic. And unquote. If the Lions can pressure Breeze with just four rushers, it will give them an opportunity to create turnovers, an area where Breeze and the Saints have struggled early in the season. He's thrown at least one interception in each of the team's 3 road games, 2 when under pressure from a standard pass rush. Breeze said, quote, "You have to avoid sacks in a smart way. You can't just throw the ball up. It's important to know where your outlets are and know where you can get rid of the ball when you have receivers," unquote. The Saints are 2-3 and in second place in the NFC South Division, whereas our beloved Detroit Lions are tied with the Green Bay Packers for first place in the NFC North. Some injury updates. New Orleans Saints tight end Jimmy Graham practiced this past Thursday and could come back to the lineup against Detroit, the Lions. He made a surprising turn to practice Thursday as a limited participant, increasing the odds he could return to the field this Sunday. For Detroit, tight end Eric Ebron. Jimmy Graham is a tight end as well, but Eric Ebron missed Thursday's practice with an ankle injury, leaving the Lions with one healthy tight end left, and that's Brandon Pettigrew. Richard Tyler Hickman said the Lions would have to put mad pressure on Breeze and the secondary needs to step up. Well, yeah, they need to keep stepping up like they have their first 5 games. Joseph Fourier is still sidelined with an ankle injury of his own. But the Lions got some good news as injury on the injury front, as defensive end Ezekiel Ansah with a toe was able to return to practice in a limited capacity, while receiver and return man Jeremy Ross was a full go after sitting Wednesday with a hamstring injury. And of course, Reggie Bush is 100% sure he'll return to the lineup. Calvin Johnson could sit out until week 10 with his ankle soreness, and running back Theo Riddick remains out after scoring one touchdown in Minnesota. Stafford does need to show up. I'm going to get to Stafford right now. Let's see. There we go. Joe Lombardi admits play calling gaffes, seeks to put Matthew Stafford in better situations. Justin Rogers from MLive.com writes, Detroit Lions offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi is still finding his way in his new role. The rookie play caller will tell you he's made some questionable decisions on early downs, including having an offensive guard run a route in the red zone. And he is still working on finding the right set of plays to put his quarterback in a position to succeed. But it has been far from a total disaster to start the season. Lombardi likes the way his unit has protected the ball, minimized mistakes, and done enough to help the team get off to a 4-2 start that has the Lions atop the NFC North, tied for first with the Green Bay Packers, as I mentioned before. Heading into Sunday's contest at Ford Field against the New Orleans Saints, Lombardi said, and I quote, "Our first goal is to not beat ourselves. We've had a couple games where we've had too many turnovers, but for the most part, I think we're starting to minimize some of those things. That's the thing we're most encouraged by, is we're not beating ourselves. Now it's time to pick it up and start beating people, beating opposing teams," he meant, and unquote. Richard comments, Stafford throws interception after interception. He didn't throw any interceptions last Sunday against Minnesota, and the Lions offense didn't turn the ball over even once. He threw one or two passes that could have been intercepted, but they were incomplete. So hopefully the Lions will keep the turnover margin at a Bengal number, which is 0. For the Lions to start putting away opponents with their potentially high-powered offense, they'll need to start finding ways to more consistently move the chains and put points on the board. The team currently ranks 14th in total offense and a dismal 27th in scoring at 19.7 points per game. Points per game. While injuries to Calvin Johnson, Reggie Bush, Adrian Waddle, Joseph Fourier, and Joique Bell have been a factor, Lombardi feels he's contributed to the issues by making some aggressive play calls on first downs that have backfired and put the team in a hole on later downs. Lombardi said, and I quote, "I feel like I've made certain calls in situations that has put us in some tough spots. We've had unusually large amounts of second and longs and third and longs. Certainly I'm not going to take the blame for all of that, but there have been some, I guess you could say, aggressive play calls that if I had back, maybe you could call something a little safer," and I quote. Lombardi highlighted the trick play he called last week as an example. Okay. Nursing a 10-0 lead in the third quarter against the Minnesota Vikings on the road, Detroit's struggling offense worked its way into the red zone for just the second time in the contest. That's when Lombardi decided to dial up a pass play for 330-pound guard Larry Warford, hoping to surprise the defense. Instead, the play resulted in a sack and a loss of 4 yards. After another sack on third down, the Lions settled for a 44-yard field goal attempt that kicker Matt Prater missed off the left upright. Matt Prater finished just 1 for 3. I'll give him at least one more game, but I don't feel too much confidence in him. I don't have too much confidence in Prater. I know some of you do, and I respect that. But I think it's time to bring back Havard Kickalicious Rugland. Forget his lack of experience in the NFL. It's the kicking skill that matters the most. And it's incredible. And Kickalicious has that incredible kicking skill. Take one more look at his videos. Back to the article here. Lombardi said, and I quote, "It sure seemed like a good idea in practice. We call that an outhouse or castle play. You're either in the outhouse or the castle." It turned out to be an outhouse play. There have been a few of those, whether it's a bad play call, bad execution, bad luck, that I'd certainly like to have that one back, unquote. The end of that drive highlighted another problem Lombardi has struggled to correct: the amount of punishment quarterback Matthew Stafford has taken this season. He's already been sacked 21 times. You can actually blame at least most of that on the Lions' offensive line. Against the Vikings, the Lions simplified their run blocking to get the offensive line back on track with that aspect of the game. Lombardi admitted he's working on something similar to help keep Stafford off the ground. He said, and I quote, "Pass blocking, we certainly have a number of protections, but I think it's more the timing of the routes, making sure the quarterback is getting the ball out of his hand on time and calling some plays that develop a little bit quicker. Some of it is me having a better feel for understanding what Stafford is comfortable with, so I'm not calling these plays in my mind are like, hey, these are great ones, but sometimes a quarterback has a different feel for different plays. It's us coming to understand exactly what he's comfortable with, communicating with him, and making sure we're getting him in the right situations," unquote. Joe Lombardi will look to get the Lions offense humming against the team that employed him as their quarterbacks coach the past 5 seasons. New Orleans, the Saints, the New Orleans Saints come into the contest ranking 25th in total 25th in total defense and 28th in scoring defense. Once again, Saints tight end Jimmy Graham practiced Thursday and could play Sunday. Again, starts at 1 on Fox this Sunday. Starts at 1 on Fox. Let's take a further look at Joseph Fourier. He's using an anti-gravity treadmill to inch closer to return to the lineup. He sprained his ankle after chasing his dog urinating down some steps at his apartment last month. He's out of his boot and off the crutches, but isn't running yet, which means he can be ruled out for Sunday's game against the New Orleans Saints. But he's ramping up his rehab, which is a sign he could return within the next couple weeks. Within the next couple weeks. He's using an anti-gravity treadmill called the Alter G to gradually put more weight on the ankle until he's cleared to run with full body weight. Fourier said he's up to a high percentage of weight now, which suggests he could get that clearance soon. He's making strides right now and making progress. For now, the Lions have gone to a two-man rotation at tight end with him still out, but neither player has factored much into the passing game. Rookie Eric Ebron was supposed to fill that role after Detroit took him 10th overall in the draft, but he has just 10 catches for 103 yards and 1 touchdown. Brandon Pettigrew is mostly a blocker at this point in his career, receiving only 8 targets all year. He caught 5 of those balls for 40 yards. Let's go to some Red Wings here. Red Wings lose their second straight, 3-2 in a shootout. Jimmy Howard was great in regulation and overtime, but he deflated in the shootout, giving up a goal in the first 2 shooters, David Krejci and Riley Smith. They both scored in regulation as well. Bruins won the Bruins won the shootout 2-0 and the game 3-2. Tomas Tatar and Gustav Nyquist scored the lone goals for Detroit. Scored the 2 goals for the Red Wings. This is just like the same old Red Wings the past 5 seasons. I'm not that excited about them. They'll make the playoffs, but still not go very far. I blame this all on Ken Holland, their general manager. The Red Wings are now 1-1-1, 1 win, 1 loss, and 1 overtime loss. 1 win, 1 regulation loss, and 1 overtime loss. Pavel Datsyuk is reported to remain out for the entire weekend as the Red Wings prepare to play a home-and-home set with the Toronto Maple Leafs Friday at 7:30 and Saturday at 7. Both games are on Fox Sports Detroit. Helene St. James tweeted, however, that Pavel Datsuk's possible return will be by the following weekend. So Datsuk might return sometime sooner than you think. So 1-1-1 is how they cap off their season opening homestand at Joe Louis Arena. Speaking of Joe Louis Arena, a deal lets Detroit creditor develop the Joe Louis site. Robert Snell, David Shepardson, and Christine Ferretti from the Detroit News write, quote, not quote, but they write, the last major holdout creditor in Detroit's bankruptcy case will get to redevelop the Joe Louis Arena site under terms of a deal struck early Thursday aimed at speeding the city's exit from bankruptcy court. Under the deal, holdout bond insurer Financial Guarantee Insurance Company will replace the longtime home of the Detroit Red Wings, Joe Louis Arena, with a hotel, riverfront condominiums, and retail. The development, which includes the Joe Louis Arena parking garage, has the potential to transform a stretch of the riverfront west of Cobo Center and complement earlier redevelopment efforts along the Detroit River. Robert Snell tweeted, I wonder if Eddie Vedder will give FGIC a shout-out tonight during gig at Joe Louis Arena. But Detroit, he also tweeted Detroit #Detroit mayor on FGIC bankruptcy deal. Quote, it's a fair settlement and a fair resolution, and I fully support it. Detroit bankruptcy attorney Corinne Ball said, quote, this will be hopefully another turning point, another turning moment for this area of Detroit, unquote. The deal flips FGIC from being the last major creditor fighting Detroit's debit-cutting plan into a partner in the city's revitalization. Another partner includes a fellow bond insurer, Syncora Guarantee Incorporated, which reached an earlier developmental deal with Detroit involving the Detroit Windsor Tunnel, cash, and a parking garage in Grand Citrus Park. Ball called the deal to resolve a $1.1 billion FGIC claim, quote, a significant investment in Detroit's future, unquote. The hotel won't be built until 2017 or open until 2022. It must include at least 300 rooms and cannot exceed 30 stories under terms of the deal. The deal must also be approved by the U.S. bankruptcy judge Stephen Rhodes, who will determine if the city's plan to shed more than $7 billion in debt is feasible and in the best interest of creditors. Detroit emergency manager Kevin Orr will ask city council members to approve the deal next week. For the Red Wings, they will move into a new arena in the Cass Corridor in 2 years. The city also reached a separate deal with Macomb Interceptor Drainage District, a group that was fighting the city's debt-cutting plan. The group settled for a $22 million claim. The city's bankrupt lawyer Heather Lennox said today. The FGIC deal reached at 2:30 a.m. following closed-door negotiations overseen by Chief U.S. District Judge and bankruptcy mediator Gerald Rosen and involving Governor Rick Snyder advisor Richard Baird, was announced at 9:30 a.m. in federal court. Now let's move on to some Pistons basketball. The Pistons have shown interest in forward Chase Budinger, who is being shopped by the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Houston Rockets have also shown an interest. They are both interested on the $5 million player option. After the Pistons lost shooting guard Jody Meeks for 2 months because of a fractured back. Budinger is guaranteed $5 million for this upcoming NBA regular season. He averaged 6.7 points for the Wolves a season ago, and played 3 seasons in Houston after getting drafted in the second round in 2009. Pistons get ready to take on one of Stan Van Gundy's old teams, the Orlando Magic, in preseason action at 7:30. They are 3-1, coming off a 104-84 win over the Charlotte Hornets on the road. The only loss they suffered was in Washington the previous Sunday, 91-89 to the Wizards. Now some Tigers. The Tigers have retained the entire coaching staff for the 2015 season, including manager Brad Ausmus. I know a lot of us have a problem with that, but here's the thing. Dave Dombrowski held a press conference Tuesday at 2:30 p.m. and he wanted he's focusing on addressing the bullpen issues, a new center fielder, and a new left-handed batter. He also has two decisions. One, to pick up Joakim Soria's option, 5-point-something million. I'll have to double check. And Avila's $4 million option. He said he had no confidence in re-signing starting pitcher Max Scherzer. He also hopes Victor Martinez and David Price will be back. And thinks Verlander is going to get better. Brad Ausmus is going to get better as a manager after a first year in the major leagues as a manager. Back to the Wings. Daniel Alfredsson may have to retire after suffering a setback. That's from DetroitSportsNation.com. The Tigers first. Center field is, like Dave Dombrowski mentioned, was one of his three priorities. The Detroit News says, chances are from Tom Gage, chances are the Tigers would like to come up with something better than potentially okay, which is all that Rajay did in center field. Previously, they were interested in Cuban-born Rusney Castillo, who signed with the Red Sox, who signed a $72.5 million deal for 7 years with the Boston Red Sox. Denard Span would be an interesting free agent if indeed he becomes a free agent. But after a strong 2014 it's expected the Washington Nationals will pick up the $9 million option on Span's contract. Dave Dombrowski will not make any options until after the World Series concludes. Back to Daniel Alfredsson. Red Wings general manager Ken Holland said, quote, Alfredsson was feeling pretty good, but was getting frustrated because he wasn't getting over the hump. He would feel good, push it, and have a setback. He was frustrated because he was not able to get to the point where he wants to be at to tell me he wants to practice with us, unquote. That's about it. Now some college football. Looking up the schedule. Michigan State takes on Indiana in Bloomington at 3:30 on ESPN. Michigan has off before taking on Michigan State the week after. Central Michigan takes on Ball State at Kelly Short Stadium in Mount Pleasant at 3:30. Eastern Michigan travels to Massachusetts at 3 o'clock. And Western Michigan visits the Bowling Green Falcons at 2 o'clock. So, Michigan State is 5-1. Michigan is 3-4. Central Michigan, I think they're 4-3. I'll check them out. But that's going to wrap it up for Taylor's Detroit Sports episode 73 on Spreaker and on iHeartRadio. I'll be back with episode 74 later Friday night. TTFN, ta-ta for now.